start, inshallah.
Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome back. It's good to be back for the weekly Halaqah. And so, inshallah ta'ala, this week's Halaqah, inshallah, we are going to focus on the broadcast of the Quran to humanity that follows the divine order. SubhanAllah. A lot to cover. Inshallah ta'ala, may Allah make it easier for us to cover as much as we can. Any questions you've got, either at the end, or you can put it onto the WhatsApp group, inshallah. And you also have the YouTube channel and our website to tap into for lots more information. So divine order, literally, it means that everything in creation, everything, if we have eyes but see, is perfectly balanced, perfectly in order, designed, order, synchronized, just total perfection. This is the divine order. And the whole of the Quran is about understanding this divine order. And we can understand this because Allah is continually asking us questions. Why don't you see? Why don't you look? Why don't you ponder? Why don't you reflect? And the two key senses that keep coming up in the Quran is hearing and seeing. In relation to seeing, whether it's looking, observing, it is to use the eyes, the senses that we have, but ultimately we see in the Quran. And obviously through the sunnah of the teachings of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, it is about the heart, the qalb, not the pumping heart that we know, but it is the qalb. It is the qalb that actually sees, and it is the qalb, the heart, that actually thinks. And science, and we've said this many times, science is also understanding this today. And this broadcast of the Quran didn't happen all in one go, as was questioned by those who were opposing the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why was the Quran not all revealed in one go? And when we spoke about the heart a few moments ago, that the Quran came to change hearts. First and foremost, the Quran was embedded on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's heart. And then from that point, it's been passed down to come onto our hearts, inshallah. And so the Quran was revealed not to inform, but to transform. And so it is a transformation of the heart. Okay? It is a transformation of the hearts. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout the Quran refers to the heart. And this broadcast happened not in one go, but gradually over a period of 23 years. And so when we look at the divine order, whether it's the natural world, whatever it is, everything through the cycles of growth of plants, trees, birds, bees, the human, everything is moving, everything is growing and decaying at this in the synchronized divine order. Okay, and this is in essence what Tawheed is. It is, when we dig deep linguistically into the term Tawheed, it means to unify. And it's not just about reading about it, it's actually seeing it, understanding it, implementing it, and living by it. Okay. And so this is all about this broadcast. And this is what heart see is about. So again, we go back to the heart. It is about the heart. And the message of the Quran is about whatever you see, and it goes back to that first ayat that we always return to, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Read in the name of your Rabb who has created. Whatever you see, who is behind all of this? And all of this is actually interconnected. And unless we learn to see and to think with the heart, we're not going to understand this. And that's the crisis that we are in today. And that was the reason why we launched Part C. Okay. And we're going to try and unpack a little bit of this today to get a better understanding. We go on to the next slide, please. So, al-ubudiyya al-kawniyya, universal submission. Okay, so when we look at the Quran, we can say it's in two parts. It is the revelation, and within the revelation that we learn from Heart C and we learn from our ulama of the past is the Kitab al-Kawn, the book of nature. Okay, and it's all connected. So everything is in total submission. So if we turn to Surah Al-Imran, ayat 109, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Here, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth. And to Allah will all the matters be returned. So we can take so much benefit just from this ayat. And when we move on to the next ayat in a few moments, we will see a remarkable similarity. And as I say to you, there's so much that we can take benefit, but this is what we've spoken about at the moment, that everything in creation, okay, is interconnected. And it's showing us the lesson is Tawheed, okay? Everything is unified. Everything is in universal submission. So when Allah says to Allah belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth, whether we can see it, understand it, or not, okay, all matters will be returned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment, which is the requital. Everything that we do will be presented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the whole point of Heart C's birth was to try and see the world and to see and to think in the correct way the Quran wants us to see. And science would call that today systems thinking, to see everything in terms of everything connected. And we've spoken about many times, it's there on the website, about the relationship that ancient civilizations understood and our Islamic civilizations understood, the relationship between the heart, the qalb, and the brain hemispheres, particularly the right brain hemisphere. And so when we look at the creation, okay, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to look at, we see divine order. But also the Quran coming down, although it came down gradually, that is also in divine order. So the question is, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the universe in divine order, and Allah wants us to see it and to study it, then would not then the Creator bring the final blueprint, the final guidance for mankind also in divine order? Of course. Okay. And that's why it was revealed gradually. The broadcast from the Prophet's actions it came out gradually for many reasons to stir the heart, the qalb, and the minds. So we can just look at this ayat, but what we have to do when we go into tadabbur, okay, is to stand back and start to connect the dots. Okay, this is the right brain hemisphere having a relationship with the qalb. So let's try and look at, as we keep referring to understanding relationships, patterns, and contexts. and we've spoken about the sermon that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, gave, and we hear across the world on every Jummah Friday, the Khutbah al-Hajjah, and in that first ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ittaqullaha haqqa tuqatihi wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun. Okay? And this is, we have to try and now make the connection, because that was at the beginning, and this is ayat 109. And in that particular ayat, Allah said, "Oh, you believe, revere Allah the right reverence, and do not die except as Muslims." So then the question is, because we have to keep asking questions, and Allah asks us questions, is how do we die in a state of Islam? Well, we have no idea how we're going to leave this world, and it is the day of requital that will determine that state. But we do everything within our power, inshallah ta'ala, with the tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to make sure that we leave in this world as a Muslim. And we start to then look at all these connections. We could then go on and look at then Al Imran 103. Okay, so we said 102 that we hear every Friday, and then ayat 103, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Wa'tasimu," and hold fast, be habali, to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and be not divided amongst yourselves. And the rope here, as the Mufassirin agree, the commentators of the Quran unanimously, is, majority of the cases, is the Quran, to hold on to the Quran. And the Quran is that vertical connection, because the Quran came down from the heavens. We can make another connection and then go to Al Imran ayat 104. Okay, so we've opened it up here just by looking at ayat 109. Everything in the heavens, whatever's in the heavens and whatever's on the earth, okay, and belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything is in this divine order, okay? And everything is going to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then when we look at ayat 104, وَتَكُنْ مِنْكُمْ, let them arise from you a group of people, inviting to the good, enjoining the right, forbidding the wrong. Those will be the successful. And then we go on to this ayat, and then we can then go on to, if we wanted to, ayat 110, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is then saying, arise then, you are the idol community, okay, raised up to promote good and to prevent evil. So when we are all in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of that nation, that community, which should be this ummah, because past ummahs have failed, then we should be promoting good to make and establishing this divine order on earth, eradicating evil. So when all the matters are returned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and inshallah ta'ala, we will go to Jannah. So the whole point here, when we talk about this divine order, we can just look at this one ayah, we can take much benefit, but we've now started to connect the ayats from previously, ayat 102, and also gone up to ayat 110. And we see that beautiful relationship. So how do we die as Muslims? Okay. We've just learnt there, we have to hang on to the Quran. That it's the Quran that was revealed over 23 years, gradually to penetrate the qalb, to penetrate the hearts and our hearts. Okay. Because then Allah then let arise a group from the seed as they develop, like a plant, like a tree, that they are the ones that can then take this Quran, okay, and the teachings of the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, and establish this divine order on earth. And then Allah then continues to explain here that everything in this world belongs to Allah. okay? And you are the nation to deliver that message to humanity. And that's why you are raised up to promote good and to prevent evil. So there's a lot to just take from this one ayat. And let's go on to another example. We go on to the next example. Next slide. In Surah An-Nisa, ayat 126, very similar. And to Allah belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth. And ever is Allah of all things encompassing. Muhit, muhit, encompassing. Allah SWT owns everything. So again, we can take tremendous lessons. So the main difference here is in the ayat of Surah Imran, everything is going to come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. And because previous nations have failed to take on that role of Khalifa, then you now are the nation. You are the Muslims now to take this message of the Quran that's coming down over 23 years to deliver it. And because all of humanity is going to be in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to now take up this bandwagon, this beacon, and show humanity this divine order. But everything that you see, okay, is all under the ownership of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then if we then went back one ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ دِينًا مِمَّا أَسْلَمَ وَجْعَهُ لِلَّهِ وَهُوَ مُحْسِنُ وَاتَّبَعَ مِلَّةِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا. Who is better in deen than he who submits himself before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is himself righteous and follows the religion of Ibrahim alayhi salam, which is the Hanif, the upright. Okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose Ibrahim as for a sincere friend. And so, in Surah Imran, how do we live in this world? We have to live in this world in divine order. And we can only do that if our hearts are changed. It's a journey, it's a process. Okay, it's not information, it's about transformation, which goes back to the tazkiyah al-nafs. And that's why when we look at the period of Mecca, we look at the period of Medina, it was a slow process. It was a revolution, but it was a revolution of hearts. And that's why we say transition to transformation. And so here, Allah SWT is saying that, and to Allah belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is in on the earth, and ever is Allah, all things encompassing, surrounding everything, is all owned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in that previous ayat, in Surah An-Nisa 125, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about surrendering, to submit. Okay, we have to submit to the divine order. And when we submit, that's where we go from Islam to Iman. So now we could connect into the hadith of Jibril alayhi salam, when the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, before his demise, the Prophet, the angel Jibril alayhi salam came back and asked the Prophet 3 questions. What is Islam, Iman, and Ihsan? So Islam is just to, you've come in, okay? But Iman is the submission where it's now penetrating the heart. So ayat 125 is to surrender. Basically, that ayat is saying that I am surrendering, okay? And with good deeds. And this, the surrender and the good deeds, we have to understand it, is the Sharia and the Sunnah of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And when we adhere and submit to the Sharia and the Sunnah, then we go in that divine order. Okay. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu udkhulu fis-silmi kafata wala kafata. Submit and enter completely. And so whoever enters completely, okay, then our external and our internal parts of our body are perfectly synchronized in that vertical divine order. But again, it's not going to happen overnight, because as soon as we say, I'm moving towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I want to tread the Sirat al-Mustaqim, we know there's going to be obstacles, and the enemy is none other than Iblees. A'udhu billah min ash-shaytan rajim. So there's two conditions that was in ayat 125. For any deed to be accepted, there has to be intention and ikhlas. Ikhlas is that iman, okay? And once we've grown like a seed into a tree from Islam to iman, now this ayat comes along. Because then, if we have iman, my dear brothers and sisters, we don't then have the ego. Iblis wants us to have the ego, the I, the self, me, okay, which is left brain hemisphere. Iman, if we have iman, we have submitted externally, internally, okay, and then we then say, yes, oh Allah, huh? I'm nothing. Whatever I do is only because of you. Whatever happens, oh Allah, I'm totally submitted. Huh? وَمَا خَلَقَتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَانَ لِيَعْبُدُوا. I have not created jinn and mankind except to worship me. I am just a slave. Okay, so Allah is saying, I am encompassing everything. You are nothing without me. And that is what Iman means. That means we are in total divine submission. Al-Ubudiyya, al-Kawniyya, total submission. And so now as we go through onto the next slides, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to then give us examples of this further submission. For when we become weak and we slip as we do as insan, then Allah is going to give us examples. You need to follow these examples of total submission. We could look at the left brain hemisphere and the right brain hemisphere and how both brain hemispheres have to work together. And we've mentioned many times that before the 15th, 16th century, humanity operated majority of the times in the right brain hemisphere. But obviously this self and the ego has pushed everything now into the left brain hemisphere, okay, which has taken out of this divine order, where we would then push back on this ayat. But this word here, muhit, okay, encompassing, okay, we are nothing, okay, we have totally surrendered, we have submitted to the Sharia, to the Sunnah. We don't go extreme. We take the middle path. We take the middle path. We follow the Sharia. What Allah says do, we do. What Allah says don't do, we don't do. What is according to the Sunnah, we do. If the witr salah is 3, if Salatul Maghrib is 3, we do 3 rakat, we don't do 4, we don't do 2, we don't do what we want to do. We submit. Whereas the previous nations, okay, which is mentioned at the end of Surah Al-Fatiha, because they didn't want to follow the Sharia, they didn't want to follow their prophet, then they went out of divine order. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, then study previous nations, see why we allow them to rise, but then we destroy them. Okay. So these two ayats complement each other, but there's differences when we start to then make tadabbur, and we don't just take one ayat, we start to connect the ayats. This introduces us to the science of Nazm of the Quran. Go on to the next slide. So if we go out of divine order, Allah Ta'ala is then trying to refocus us to look at creation. Okay? And if we went back to the khutbah of the Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that we hear every week, and we had a session on this. In that first ayat, which was Surah Al-Imran, "O you who believe with Allah, right reverence, do not die except as Muslims." But in the next ayat, we go on to Surah An-Nisa, which we've just covered, haven't we? We looked at 2 ayats. But in ayat 4, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ittaqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida yusli lakum a'malakum yaghfir lakum dhunubakum wa may yuti illa..." Sorry, went too far ahead. "Ya ayyuhan nasu ittaqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum min nafsin wahida wa khalaqa minha zawjaha." Okay. Here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, "O people, O nas, revere your Lord who has created you from a single soul, created from its mate, and dispersed both of them many men and women." And this word here is zawj. Zawj comes up a number of times in the Quran. And here, Allah is referring to men and women. But again, if we make tadabbur and we sit back and we want to get a good understanding of this divine order where everything is in harmony, everything is perfection. Okay, there's no disconnection, and Allah has given us lessons here in pairs between the male and the female. We could look at pairs between plants, we could look at pairs between night and day, we could look at pairs between the sun and the moon. That Allah has created everything in pairs and groups. Look at stinging nettle. Okay, you see stinging nettles, then the stinging nettles will have a relationship with what? The stinging nettles will have a relationship with the dock leaf. The dock leaf helps to take that sting away. So the pairs opens up, connected dot to relationships. Husband, wife, night, day, hot, cold, moon, sun, etc. Okay. And so everything is in pairs. And so when we look at pairs and we start to focus on pairs, again, we can connect this to those 2 ayats. Everything, if you just open your eyes, everything is in perfect order. Okay. Everything encompassing everywhere. And even the pairs of organs within you, not just you as a male and a female, but everything that is happening within inside you, because pairs then moves on to groups. And we can take many lessons here, which we do, when we look at the design concept of permaculture and guilds, planting everything in terms of guilds. So a whole ecosystem is not just mumble jumble, it's all established in terms of pairs, relationships, and it goes out as it expands into groups. But it's all working in harmony, and it's all working according to the divine order. Okay, and when you study the Sunan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the universal laws, nothing happens quickly. The natural world doesn't operate quickly. Okay, the right brain hemisphere looks at everything in a connected way. The left brain hemisphere wants to see things quickly. Okay, just snapshots, pass, yes, pass, just like we scroll through our social media. Okay, information, but not transformation. That's the crisis that we are in, this crisis of perception. So Allah is saying, look and study this divine order. That's why the Quran didn't come down all at once. Okay, the Quran came down gradually. Okay, so there was a question: if the Quran came down gradually in a particular order, then why do we have it today in a completely different order? Okay, that's for another discussion. But the order that we have it in today, as the ulama teachers, it's in divine order. Okay, it's meant to be in this order. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says many times in the Quran, do not cut and paste the ayats of the Quran. It came down during that time, whether it was an ayat or a surah, depending on whatever circumstance, what was happening in the Prophet's life and the surroundings, it came down with tremendous lessons, and each time it was penetrating the heart. It was getting them to think and ponder. And it started with Yatlu alayhim, just recite on them. It started with sound. Okay? Although the Arabs were strong on the Arabic language, they were hearing words and sounds that they hadn't heard before. What was that? It was an alert. It was pause. What was that? I haven't heard that before. So everything is created, okay, in pairs and groups. And there's a lesson here, relationships. Okay. So the Quran comes down to have a relationship with what? Our hearts. And the Quran comes down, and in the Quran is the Kitab al-Kawn, which is the book of nature. So that has a relationship with the revelation. Okay, they're not two separate revelations, they're all in one, but it's a pair. Okay, go on to the next slide. And what we can say before you look at these ayats is pairs and groups. We can understand that as an ecologist and a biologist in terms of symbiosis, a symbiotic relationship. That means the rhythm and the time scale. Okay? Look at the relationship between the nettle and that dockley, between the honeybee and the flower. How they both, the time scale in how they grow and develop and blossom, the cycle of life, how it all happens beautifully in a synchronized way. Just like with the revelation coming down and the command to the Prophet himself to rise and to deliver the message slowly, so it penetrated the hearts and minds, not to be harsh and cruel, okay, but to deliver kindness and love with peace, okay. So many lessons we can take from that when we look at what did the Prophet first talk about when he entered Medina. It was all about changing the hearts. So this symbiotic relationship with pairs, okay, the rhythm, the time scale of partners and processes of these life cycles, which complements each other. And when I mentioned the left brain hemisphere and the right brain hemisphere, okay, compared to say the nettle there and the dock leaf that we showed, well, the left brain hemisphere and the right brain hemisphere should be in a unique relationship. It should be perfectly synchronized in a symbiotic relationship. But sadly, it's not. Okay? And that's why we look at the first principle, including the second principle of heart. So we talk about rewiring. How do we rewire? We have to connect with the light of creation, the Kitab al-Kawn. And sadly today that the left brain hemisphere says, no, I don't want to have a symbiotic relationship with you as the right brain. I want to become the master. And now that's for not this lesson, but that opens up this relationship, these connections between the left brain hemisphere and him thinking he's going to be the master, to the story of Shaitan and Adam alayhi salam. Let's carry on. A number of ayats here. In Surah Al-Hadid, ayat 1, Surah Jum'ah, Surah Al-Hashr, Surah below, Surah As-Saf. Look at them. Look at them. We could just focus on those and not do anything else. Pairs, groups, the divine order. Okay, look how they begin. Sabbaha yusabbihu, Sabbaha yusabbihu. All referring to whatever's in the heavens and the earth exalts Allah. Whatever's in the heavens and whatever is on the earth. Whatever's in the heavens and whatever is on the earth. Whatever's in the heavens and whatever's on the earth. Whatever's in the heavens and whatever's on the earth. See how they have a relationship with those two ayats in Surah Al-Imran and Surah An-Nisa that we looked at. Yeah. Now, these surahs come together and there's a group of surahs, and I think we've covered this briefly before, there's a number of surahs that come together, and these were revealed in Medina, because remember how I said a few moments ago that before we looked at that ayat of Surah An-Nisa, the one before is about to submit, okay? To submit, to enter. Once we enter and we submit, then we've reached that stage of Iman, from Islam to Iman. And then we're at the stage where, oh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I am nothing. Okay, everything that is encompassing me and everything which is encompassing the whole world is all from you, oh Allah. I am nothing. I'm here to serve you. Okay. But when we slip, as the companions, some of the companions did after the migration to Yathrib, to Medina, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to give us an example, wants to give them an example, which gives us an example of, remember how you submitted, how a group of you were strong in Mecca. Now you're slipping a bit now in Medina, but this is a lesson for you to make tafakkur. Look at creation. Look how they are in perfect harmony. They are submitting. They are praising me. Okay, so these are great lessons. So again, we can connect these to pairs as well in an amazing way. Go on to the next slide. And so again, this brings in the what we call is the articulated ayat, ayat meaning signs, plural, and the unarticulated ayat. Okay. The articulated ayat is the revelation. With the unarticulated ayat, this is a whole subject in itself, which is the signs of creation. So when we put all of those ayats together that we've just briefly looked at, okay, they all connect. Okay, because in those ayats where we've looked back at a few ayats, we've gone forward, it's helping us to look at the ayats in terms of the revelation and the ayats in terms of the creation. Okay, but again, we cannot then separate the articulated ayat of revelation with the unarticulated ayat. That's not submission. Okay, we have to have that relationship. So the articulated ayat with the unarticulated ayat form a symbiotic relationship. And it's only by bringing them together, which Allah commands us to do, okay, by the observing, by the reflecting, by the seeing, to begin with the senses, ultimately with the heart. It's only through that route, okay, where the transformation can happen. The transformation can happen. And that's why this transition to transformation is there in Surah Jumu'ah. And that was one of the ayats which came up in the previous ayat. Okay? There's 4 missions given to the Prophet: to recite, tazkiyah, which is the purification, then to teach with wisdom. And so to submit to Allah subhanahu, to submit to this al-ubudiyya al-kawniyya, universal submission, which creation is doing, which previous nations did not do. Okay. By submitting to the Sharia, by submitting to the Sunnah, and not going beyond that, keeping that mizan, okay, then we are becoming that nation that Allah talks about, to bring that nation that will rise, to bring that nation that now will forbid the evil and promote the good. So we then can be the Khalifa to deliver the truth. Okay. So when humanity is in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, insan can say, yes, I was told the truth by him, by her, that Muslim. And that's our responsibility. So this divine order, this gradual revelation, okay, cannot be understood just by studying the articulated ayat and not understanding and connecting to the unarticulate ayat, i.e. the revelation with the kitab al-kawn. It has to come together. And sadly today, the majority of cases, we have separated the unarticulated ayat, the kitab al-kawn. You mentioned the kitab al-kawn, the Quran Takwini. People think you're mad. Okay, people think you're involved in some sort of bid'ah, huh? And they just focused on the articulated ayat. Then these are the problems that we face today. If we bring them together, then we will connect with this divine order. Okay, and then this divine order, these universal laws, the sunnah of Allah, where everything is in harmony. Okay. Today we're living in a world where everything is fast paced. We haven't got time to think. It's all left brain hemisphere. That's what Allah does not want. No, no. Okay, immerse yourself in creation. Okay, then by immersing yourself in creation, you begin to synchronize. You begin to, this is the energy, this is the resonance. Okay, this is the frequency that often I talk about. But sometimes I feel I can't go too deep because then people think this is stuff that we've never heard before, so it must be some sort of innovation. Okay, but our previous ulama, ancient civilizations, knew this very, very well. Go on to the next slide. So they cannot be separated, okay, as they have to work together in this divine order. So we can't just look through one window. Okay, we can't do that. We've covered navigation many, many times when I take people out. We look at navigation, not because that's the purpose, but it's a tool. But in navigation, we can't just take one tree, okay, or one leaf. We have to look at and connect all of the dots. Okay. And so when Allah is looking at pairs, zawj, I say, pairs means relationships. And it doesn't just sit with the male and the female, the husband and the wife, the bee and the flower. It means then stepping back and seeing more and more and more and more and more and more. And then that understanding, oh, subhanAllah, this is just like everything is in total submission. Everything is in divine order. Because that's the shahada. That's then I testify. That is tawheed. That is to submit. Silmi kafata. Al-Baqarah. Silmi, I submit. Kafata. That means completely, externally, internally. That's when you get that mizan, as I mentioned before. When we submit externally and internally, we're synchronized. We're in complete resonance with Allah's creation. But then that's when you reach Iman, and then you realize that all of this, okay, is from Allah Ta'ala. And that connects us back to the first ayat of Surah Halaqah. Okay, O Prophet of Allah, when he was in the cave of Hira, who's behind all of this? Now deliver this message to humanity. It's not the idols. All of this is explaining this revelation that came down, this broadcast, which came down gradually to transform the heart. And it is the heart, my dear brothers and sisters, it's the heart that is the key. Qalb as-salim, it will be the only thing that will help us when we are in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet himself said that there's a piece of flesh within the body, and if that piece of flesh is correct and sound, okay, tazkiyah, frequency, energy, resonance, if that is sound, then the whole body is sound. And that is the qalb. That is what science refers to as the brain, which is in the heart. But we knew that from the Prophet himself. This is why Allah says the qalb as-salim, the contented heart, not the pumping heart, but the qalb that sees, the qalb that thinks. Okay, science has agreed this. They've understood this now. Okay, so this is also very important for us to understand. Go on to the next slide. And Surah Al-Fatiha is key. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. You alone we worship and you alone we ask. That is testifying the Shahada. That gives us an entrance into Islam. But then we've got to move on the journey. Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. We've got to move on to Iman. Okay? And not to be like those two groups at the end. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Those two groups, particularly the Christians and the Jews, who Allah gave the prophets to, gave divine scripture to, wanted them to rise up to become the Ummah, the Muslims. Okay, they failed because they wouldn't submit, or they submitted partially, but more so they submitted to their ego and to their nafs, which we understand today, which I'm trying to teach you about, is about left brain hemisphere, right brain hemisphere. Okay, and this is all about where Allah is saying then, when He says, travel through the land and see the previous nations. I blessed them with prophets. But look, they failed. And the question is, why did they fail? Because they didn't connect to the divine order. This is why I've said Shaitan was in the company with Allah Ta'ala. Shaitan was in the company of the angels. Shaitan knows the divine order. And because of the ego, the self, he wouldn't prostrate to Adam alayhi salam. Shaitan has response. So his mission, until Allah Ta'ala says that's it, is to flip mankind off who are searching for the truth on the path of the Surah, to flip them off the path. And so he can only operate and get us to operate on the horizontal plane. So the whole of the dunya is horizontal. Okay. He knows he can't show us the vertical. The vertical is connecting to the scripture, the revelation, the Quran, the Kitab al-Kawn is connecting to Allah Ta'ala is connecting to the divine order. And this is why Shaitan, through the left brain hemisphere, has memorized humanity as part of these trials, these signs, the end of times, where we see it today, my dear brothers and sisters. We're all looking down. We've become like robots, machines. Okay, that's the whole point of heart seeing. We've got to change. We've got to rewire, to reprogram ourselves. Okay. Otherwise, these ayats that I'm reciting, it means nothing. It means nothing. But to the companions of the Prophet, his ayats were a revolution. It changed their hearts. Okay. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for them. So again, remember the Quran came to transform, not to inform. Okay. Next slide. And we'll end this on this challenge, and it really connects to everything that we've been spoken about. The world of bees, but I'm looking at a disturbing picture. What do you see? Well, we see sunflowers. And if we operate in the left brain hemisphere, that's what we just look at. We just look at what's in front of us, but we need to look behind. It doesn't look a pretty sight. To the honeybee, yeah, it's wonderful. You've got sunflowers, but what happens then once those sunflowers have finished their cycle? Then what are the bees going to do for their pollen and nectar? So that's showing us a very bleak picture. And it's all because the farmers are embedded in the left brain hemisphere. There's nothing about pears. There's nothing there about zowj. It's the complete disconnection. It's what we call as monoculture. Okay, fields are bare, barren. Look how there's no biodiversity. The ecosystems have been split up. A few trees, like a mini woodland in the middle. The earth there, the soil looks depleted. And again, there's monoculture, agriculture going there on the top right-hand side. Where's the livestock? to change that? Where's the livestock to churn the ground up? Huh? And so this is a very disturbing picture that we are seeing around the world. And the lesson is, if we look at everything that we've covered and we look at those ayats in relation to sabbihu sabbaha, everything is praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the Kitab al-Kawn. And there's not a lot of praising going on here because it's been destroyed, it's been eradicated, it's been raped, pillaged, destroyed. But what are we doing about it? It doesn't affect us at all as Muslims. It should. It should do. Because creation is continually submitted to Allah Ta'ala. It's in divine order. And these are the ayat. And if these ayat, which are disturbing, don't affect us, then we are in a serious problem. Well, we are in a serious problem. And so all of this is about to stir the heart, stir the thought. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
barakatuh. Any questions? Put it in chat if you like, or unmute yourselves. Dr. O'Hara got a comment saying, Allah bless you for excellent lecture, so grateful. Okay, if there's no questions, inshallah, we can close up.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والأصل نصلي في كس إلى الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام.